Dashboard. Sending data, sending data, sending data. Online, on Facebook, online on Periscope, and we are rocking and rolling. So we titled this one Epstein, mainly because we're going to talk about Epstein, and there's some new developments coming out. So David, why don't you go ahead and start off, man?
Absolutely. So I am from Fire Nation. I run a stream over there sometimes, but and the other reason for the hat is because we're both wearing hats, and my dog decided to eat this one. But you know what? Trump's still going to make it through, even though the media tries to tatter him. But
You,
there's been a lot of weird developments with the Epstein case. And so we're all kind of aware of the big things that happened leading up to his death. And a lot of those big things come through is just days before he ended up supposedly committing suicide. He ended up being taken off suicide watch. You had two guards who were there at the time who both simultaneously fell asleep at the exact same time and then falsified the records. At the same time, the camera went down. I guess the Geek Squad guy just installed it wrong and didn't want to do anything with it. And it was formerly working, but during the time when he got off of himself, he ended up having that go down to where the camera's gone. And then he has his throat that was crushed. So he had his Adam's apple, basically. That portion of his neck was broken, which is consistent mainly with strangulation victims, not with suicide victims. If you're from a high enough space, yeah, you can do it. But this is a guy who's 6 feet tall who apparently strangled himself with a bed sheet by kneeling. I mean, that's some sycophantic stuff you do in your closet by yourself. Well, we're not going to go there.
and
Any
don't don't
questions?
don't forget to mention he signed a will 2 days before he hung himself.
Absolutely. And so some of the facts that we ended up getting just recently is that this one right here is from the New York Post. Epstein spent hours alone with a mysterious woman in lockup. And he spent at least 2 hours locked up alone with a mystery woman, possibly part of his legal team, just a day after he was taken off suicide watch at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. This happened hours before he ended up having the suicide incident. And
Yep.
there was things just down the hall to where they were saying, okay, so they heard screaming and yelling, and by some witness accounts they were saying he was saying things like no, 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 and then all of a sudden, breathe, Epstein, breathe, after you have all of that thrashing about and all of the sound that's coming off of that. So it's pretty interesting in that part. But a lot of the things that I wanted to touch on with this is that a lot of people are pointing to Bill and Hillary Clinton and saying that, well, he probably had something to do with it, because don't get me wrong, the body count for those guys, that's massive. But the thing
and
that I
and
wanted
and
to
growing and growing.
Oh, and growing. I mean, the memes are out there. I was seeing one about the Kevorkian guy who assisted suicide in 168 cases, and Hillary's like, "Hold my beer." But we
She's
have
the
all these
original. She's
people.
the original Kevorkian.
Oh, of course. I mean, they've been doing it since time began, since the Hillary Foundation was formed. They've already been knocking people off. The stories you could go on for confirmed body counts of suspicious incidents are up to like something like 58 of extremely suspicious incidents, like shot yourself in the back of the head 2 times.
Well, and there was something I read yesterday or today where the cellmate of Epstein wanted moved, and he had information or something. So don't be surprised if another
And
inmate
that was
around that
another fact.
area, another inmate ends up
So
dead here soon.
it was just 3 hours before he ended up apparently committing suicide. They moved his cellmate out of there too. So there's only one of two options, the way I see it. I don't see this as a suicide thing. He had already apparently told his family and the media that he was not suicidal. He had not tried to commit suicide, and he wasn't going to. And if he died, they'd kill him. That was actually something he had told them. And I'll see if I can find it. But
David, and we're starting to
that I
lose your
really
vi-
wanted to get to was
we're starting to kind of lose your video a little bit. You guys got storms in your area?
Yeah, we might have some storms over here right now.
Okay. Yeah, you're just starting to kind of digitize and cut in and out a little bit. Just letting you know.
Okay. Miss, make sure your Wi-Fi is off on your phone. That one shouldn't affect you. But here's what I wanted to get to is because this is way, way, way bigger than Bill and Hillary. When you look at the names who are on his list and the names of the people who are with him, I mean, Bill and Hillary may be worth $81 million. That's probably around their net worth.
That may be
You've
a
got
reserve number.
guys. Oh, I mean, even then, let's say 500 million. Let's go crazy. So right here, we've got a story that came from CNBC. Years after serving jail time, Jeffrey Epstein found a way to meet with Microsoft Bill Gates to discuss philanthropy. Bill Gates spoke more than one time with Jeffrey Epstein, and the late financier accused of child sex trafficking. But he had apparently flown multiple times after he was already convicted of child sex trafficking on the Lolita Express. So you've got guys who are meeting with this guy, and when you look at his little black book has all of the names that all of the conspiracy theories have been swirling around. And I was looking through it. You got Soros on it, you got the Rothschilds on it, you got all of these big name key actors who were basically using this guy in order to get dirt on people. I believe what this guy's role was
Uh, you still there, David? I think we might have lost you.
is to get dirt on individuals and make them.
We're losing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you now. Oh, that's weird.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's
OBS
probably just my
OBS is
internet.
like OBS is like resizing automatically your video. That's weird.
Oh, that's really really weird. So maybe it's like lowering it in quality to try to bring it through.
I don't know. Your frame just like expanded. It was
There
weird.
should be a way to where you can lock it in place to where you can right click on it and you can say lock on that. So how about this too? How about the fact that we know one of his cohorts was one of the girls that he had brought in? Um, that little girl that now is missing in action. Why are we not hearing any news reports on finding her? Because at this point, she's the last living person that we know was involved, who might be able to do a plea deal and a tell-all story.
Is that the one that was spotted at like In-N-Out Burger or something a couple days ago?
I'm not sure about that, but it was. Let me see.
It was basically, it sounded like it was his procurer of the young girls is the one that I'm thinking of.
Rachel Chandler.
No, that's a different girl. That's probably one of the early girls that stuck with him, is my guess.
Yeah, there was one of the early girls who stuck with him and helped procure these girls. And then the other case of this too is he had apparently had friends send him three girls for his birthday who were 12-year-old girls
Yeah,
from France.
isn't that sick?
Yeah, and this story, when you're listening to it from the media and the fake news, they're saying the youngest it went was 14, which that's still plenty bad. But once you start going down to 12 and younger, you are in literally destroying a little girl completely. Like it was back in the old days, you had people who would marry at those ages and it wouldn't destroy a girl. Is the only reason I'm saying that. Anything younger than that, you're literally destroying a girl's insides.
Well, and
So
there was a lot of other things too. Like even when he was still at the prison, like there was a young woman that came to visit him. I was reading something, and the other attorneys for the other inmates were pissed off because they were basically using the room like for 12 hours at a time. And basically, what it amounts to is Epstein didn't want to go back to his cell.
yeah,
And to me, that either shows two things. I mean, being in solitary confinement, it sucks anyway. But to me, it sounded like he was worried that if something would happen to him if he went back.
I
And
think that's exactly what it was.
so
I think he was terrified.
this is going to be a mystery. Uh, I don't think anything's ever going to come out about this. I don't think anyone's ever going to be found guilty of it, unless there is some video or something that comes out. The problem that we have is no matter what anybody says anymore, unless there's video evidence of it, nobody believes it.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you just have testimony of this or that, unless you can put hard, cold facts, which I believe he was probably one of the only people who could. But the funny thing is, he was cooperating. He had said that he wanted to cooperate. He had said that he was going to do this for a lenient sentence. And depending on the names he threw out there, if he threw out big names, like the names that I think were involved in this, then yeah, you're talking about like crazy deal for him to be able to get off. He never should see the light of day, but if he throws the big whales under the bus, he probably would have. And the other thing to mention is on his island, the FBI was going into his island and they're blocking up windows. And we had people, not the big news media, but we had people, private individuals who were on drones 24 hours a day watching what the FBI was doing and removing. And they were removing all kinds of obelisks and statues and pagan things. And he had apparently buried bodies and crap like that for
Well,
maybe sacrifices.
they're finding bodies and stuff out on the edge of the island, like in the water.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I've seen. And then, of course, everybody knows about Bill Clinton and the blue dress.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so, I mean, he had some really, really weird. It's almost like trophies of
Mm-hmm.
it was like his proof that these people had been there, kind of thing. And I, I this guy was really, really dirty. I mean, unbelievably dirty. And the thing is nobody's. I don't know. Have you seen anything on who's supposed to be getting the proceeds of the will?
Actually, yeah, I was hearing about that, and it was just literally, I believe, 2 days beforehand. He had signed over a new will. Everything was supposed to go to his brother, but instead he signed it over to this trust, which we don't know who is named in that trust, which I believe we need congressional hearings to unseal that trust and find out the names on that trust, because you got 580 some $1 million that are going to whoever's on that trust. And I believe the public, with how bad this guy is, they deserve to see and break that seal of that trust to be able to see who's the benefactors of that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one more thing that they found. I guess just recently. I guess he um, had a concrete truck show up
Four
on the island.
days.
He paid for it. It was like $50,000 to get it there or something like that. It had shown up on the island, and nobody knows exactly what they were using it for. I'm sure that there's a lot of speculation as far as burying bodies, burying evidence, whatever you
Well,
want to
one of the
say.
things that I heard that was convincing is from this drone footage, we can see tunnels. And we
Hmm.
can see tunnels that ended up going all throughout this complex underground. And I'm guessing he may have filled in one or two of those tunnels to hide all the bodies, because I guarantee you there's way more bodies than what they're finding here.
Well,
If
the,
this
the
guy's as prolific, I mean, that's insane.
the crazy thing is they arrested him over a month ago, and it took them 3 weeks to get anybody out there to even look at the place. So
Mhm.
what's the who's to say that whoever worked for him or worked with him, bodyguards, different people didn't have a chance to go out there and clean some stuff up. So I mean, what they didn't find may be more incriminating than what they actually did find. So
Well, and
I,
even now, I mean, I don't understand. It's not standard operating procedure, as far as I'm aware, for the FBI to start covering up windows and start covering up things like that within the house so the public can't get a view. That's not public. Like that's not the standard procedure. And so you've got all of these people that are wondering why the FBI is removing things that are occult type symbols and taking down statues and things like that, and nobody's reporting on it. Have you seen one big news corporation that has said, hey, it's temple,
yeah.
basically?
Well,
And
and the thing is, he was smart enough to do this off of the mainland. So, but the crazy thing is a lot of the other people around him at the airports, places like that, had seen him coming and going, and there had been certain reports, that he was traveling with young women, yada yada yada, and the FBI covered it up, or they didn't do anything about it. I'm sure that any other law enforcement agency probably just looked the other way.
mhm.
So they should be just as implicated as him himself.
Well, and I
But
was listening to some things today that I wasn't able to fact check yet, but they were actually talking about his alliances with intelligence. So he did have intelligence with both CIA and with some contacts over with the Israeli CIA. And he was all over the place with not just them, but he had Russian contacts and all kinds of different things. But one of the interesting things that came out of this is towards the last probably 12 years, he was starting to buy the cooperation of all the major media. He was
right.
making them spin stories, and he was turning around doing this. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, the media is complicit with allowing this to go on for so long.
Well, and if you follow along with Twitter and some of these other social media sites, you know that they are trying to make it sound like pedophilia and everything is a natural thing, and that men like little girls and yada yada yada. They're trying to naturalize that. They're trying to make that a normal thing. And I think they knew that this was coming. I think that they knew eventually Epstein was going to get nailed, and this is their way to get out in front of it and basically normalize it before it ever hit the fan. And I think that there's a bunch of rich dudes in Hollywood, in New York, in probably San Francisco, and a lot of major places that are really, really shitting themselves right now
Oh
because
yeah.
who knows what kind of documents he actually had? Who knows what kind of pictures he had? And if any of it was ever destroyed or if it was all hidden. Um, you know,
Well, and I'm wondering too, we have all those sealed indictments, and from what I remember of those sealed indictments, the 33,000 sealed indictments, those were in connection to a child sex trafficking ring. So I'm wondering if the 33,000 people weren't actually the people who were involved with Epstein. But another big one of this is that it was recently found out that the Las Vegas shooter, he was also involved in a child sex ring. And
yeah,
he
that
had actually been convicted of that, but they're not reporting on any of that.
the dude that did the Las Vegas shooting, he was just kind of a weird guy anyway. I mean, it would not surprise me in the least that he was involved in that. Um, but the guy lived a weird life. I mean, you could tell that by just, uh, I don't know, maybe watching his mannerisms. There was video where he was gambling in the casinos. And the scary thing is I've known people like that. I've worked for people like that. Not
Hmm.
necessarily where they were, um, where they were going after young girls, but just the mannerisms, and they're all kind of strange. They kind of live in their own world. They believe certain things, and I don't know. The David, the thing is we don't live in the kind of world where we make millions of dollars. We can't buy our way out of crap. And most of the people that are involved in this stuff, that's exactly how they get away with it, is they buy themselves out of whatever problems that they're in.
Well, and basically what it comes down to is how cheap life is. Like, for instance, I was looking a while ago, I watched the movie Hitman, and I started looking up how much Hitman actually make. And like a top tier Hitman, they'll make $10,000 for a job.
Hmm.
That's nothing.
No.
$10,000, that's not even a flippin' used Nissan.
Yeah, but you do 10 of them a year. That's one a month. That's one for prep time, one for travel, one for whatever. And dude, you know that there's got to be hit squads on this continent. I mean, there is. And
Hmm.
the thing is that especially whenever you get someone like Epstein or the Clintons or whoever, they're paying them
Hmm.
more than the 10 grand. They're paying the 10 grand for the hit maybe, but they're paying a lot more to keep their mouth shut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in regards to things like that, you'd have to. But it's interesting to me to see all of the ways that this thing is unfolding, and I still want to know why aren't we focusing on that Rachel gal who was apparently one of the recruiters? Why aren't we trying to find her? Why aren't we trying to find other people who know anything?
That's a good question. That's the one. Rachel's the one I think that was at the In and Out thing. She had been
Yeah.
spotted. Somebody had taken a picture of her or something there, and
At least she's got good taste in food. I can't fault her there.
yeah, she
But
should
she
have.
had actually, in some of the reports, she was actually apparently recruiting these girls, and not just recruiting them, but even she herself was having sex with them.
Well, there's been reports for a long time that Hillary was having sex with young girls here or there, and there was some speculation that she was having sex with Huma Abedin. So the fact is these people are sick. They're willing to do anything that they want. The thing is this what the hell is the drug that they get off the kids from their adrenaline? Shit,
Adrenochrome.
adrenochrome. There you go. You know, it's weird that stuff just started kind of popping up with Pizzagate and all this other stuff, and the timing of it is like it's insane. I mean, who dreams of this stuff? There's got to be some truth behind it, whether it's the entire
Hmm.
truth or not. There has to be some truth behind it, or it wouldn't have got started. And
Hmm.
the fact that there's a name for the drug, and so there is some evidence that it's a real thing. It's not something that's entirely fake. And the problem that we have, and this is 100% the truth, is you have so many people out there that like to uh, blow things up. They like to make such a big deal out of things, and they blow things up, and then they harp on it. And I gotta say, there's a few guys out there that are now no longer on any major internet source, like oh God, what the hell's his name? I'm sure
AJ
you
with
know
Infowars. Yeah.
Infowars, yeah. Um, so those guys, I mean, it's like they've watched a little too much X Files. Now, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but they sensationalize it so bad that it gets to the point where it's hard to believe it. Even if there's a lot of truth in it, they sensationalize it. All the news outlets do it, but some of them do it way way worse than others.
Well,
And
and this is what I think it comes down to is I believe personally that some of the things that he's saying has complete truth to it because there's a lot of things that you can fact check and actually see through to it. But the problem comes in is the disinformation. And I believe that we have people who are placed within all of these media corporations, including InfoWars and any of these big ones that get big, that those people end up working for intelligence and that those
mhm,
people are on disinformation campaigns. We saw this back in the day. We saw it when they were providing drugs and trying to make a drug culture amongst the black population in the 60s.
right,
We had Rick Ross coming out and saying that, hey, the CIA was doing this. And they were asking me to write these songs to make it cool for everybody, to make everybody be incited to do them. And so at the same time as you had that, you had people who were legitimately releasing things and then also even things on the UFOs. We have documents right now from the CIA that said, yeah, we ended up going through and causing disinformation campaigns to make people look crazy. So
right,
why is it most of this information, the things that you see the most on YouTube when you look this stuff up, it's something with conspiracy theories across the board. It's not one guy who found out something about something. It's one guy who talks about the Twin Towers, who talks about the Sandy Hook shooting, who talks about literally everything else across the board. And you look at him and be like, that guy's not credible.
right,
And so it's a way of releasing the information without making it credible. And then you destroy the reputation of anybody who believes in it. There's way too many coincidences in this to actually believe it's a suicide. So the way I see it is he either went into a witness protection program, and that was the only way they could keep him safe, or he got offed. And I'm leaning towards he got offed because dead men tell no lies.
well, and I think he's dead too. And the reason I think that is because the amount of people that he probably that his body passed hands through. I mean, first you got the people that were putting him in the ambulance, and then you got the people that did the autopsies. They actually brought in Dr. Bodden for that. And I don't know if you know who he is or not, but he did a bunch of
I don't.
celebrity. Okay, so Dr. Bodden is back 10 years ago or so, or maybe longer than that. There was a thing on, I think it was HBO, or it's on maybe it's Discovery Channel. I can't remember. Anyway, he used to do. Uh, he's a very, very, very well known forensic pathologist. The guy would come in and he would do. If there was a question on someone's death, they would bring this guy in, a very famous guy, and then he would go through and do an autopsy on somebody, and then come up with his conclusion on what they were, on what the source of death, or what may have killed the person. And he actually had a special on HBO for a while, and he went over a bunch of that stuff. So, and the guy's pretty credible. I mean, he's helped with a bunch of different investigations, and he's a credible source. Anyway, they brought him in, um, and then the crazy thing is the people that were at the prison whenever this guy died, they all have been fired or relieved, um,
Mhm.
and that's a good thing. The problem is why wasn't this stuff brought forward way before the most important inmate in United States history was either offed himself or was killed in murder? I cannot believe that they would drop the ball that bad on someone that was so big. That would be like, honestly, David, that would be like letting one of the 9/11 bombers go that survived back out into the street by screwing up instead of seeing
Mhm.
justice.
Well, and
You,
here's the way we can track this too. We should do our due diligence to look at the people that got reassigned and see the positions that they got reassigned to. In a lot
hmm
of cases, when something like this happens and it was paid off, they get reassigned straight to a better role someplace else. So it's
yeah,
basically it's not a reassignment; it's a promotion.
it's like
Look
a
at
big
I believe it was
revolving
Uma
door.
Abedin.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Uma she actually got caught transporting kids, and I'm not sure it was exactly her, but it was one of those big names that were there. Um, but she got caught transporting kids across the border without their parents' knowledge or consent, and then she ended up getting taken out of her role, which was already a big role in the government, and then they put her in charge of the children and in charge of like an education system. It's like, really? The lady just got caught transporting a load of kids over the border. No wonder they don't want the border because it wrecks their ability to get kids in.
well, we all know that there's a separate set of laws for the people that are in the government or work for the government or work for people in the government. Look what Cory Booker did. What was it? About a month ago or so, went over to Mexico and basically escorted illegals from Mexico over here. And what kind of trouble did he get into? He didn't get into anything. As far as
Mm-hmm.
I know, the illegals are still here. They never were shipped back. Um, but there's so many things that really stink about what's going on. And here's the scary thing. Okay, with today's technology that we have, with Big Brother everywhere, they're still finding ways to get away with certain shit, like this Epstein thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would think, and I've worked in a prison, so I know how many cameras are in the place. I mean, I have worked in, when you're in there, you are not alone ever. You go into the showers, there's cameras in the showers. You go into, eat, there's cameras in there eating. When you go in your cell, there's not a camera. There may not be a camera in your cell, but there's one just outside the cell. Um, so it's amazing that we haven't seen any footage at all, even in the hallway of the prison that was going, that this all happened in. And I don't think that there's ever been any names named on the officers that were there. And maybe that's a privacy thing. I don't know. But I think that the American people should at least be able to know the names of the people who really fucked up.
Yeah. This is an interesting article. I was just looking for that. I don't think it was Aberdeen. I take that back. It was actually one of Clinton's aides, if I remember correctly. But this is another interesting article that came out. Said Hillary Clinton intervened with policy on behalf of Laura Silsby, and she's the former director of New Life Children's Refuge. Emails from her organization can be found in WikiLeaks Hillary Clinton email archive discussing the NGO before her arrest. Silsby's organization appears in Clinton's emails soliciting donations from the ministry. The refuge was founded by Silsby and Charius Coulter, both attendees of the Central Valley Baptist Church in Meriden, Idaho. Silsby was reported to have a history of bad debts and unpaid wages, but on January 29th, 2010, she was arrested with 9 other American nationals attempting to steal 33 children from the country, most of whom were not even orphans or had families, according to some reports. CNN reported February 9th, 2010, this was not the first time Silsby had attempted to traffic children out of Haiti. Haitian police, acting on a tip, had intercepted Silsby in an earlier separate attempt to remove 40 children out of the country. So not once, but twice here has this girl been out. So Bill and Hillary took extraordinary interest in the Silsby case from the moment she was arrested and almost immediately stepped in on her behalf. The Harvard Human Rights Journal stated that one of Bill Clinton's first acts as special envoy for the United Nations in Haiti was to put the fire of child abuse abduction scandal involving American citizens on February 7, 2010. The Sunday Times reported that Bill Clinton had intervened to strike a deal with the Haitian government, securing the release of all co-conspirators except for Silsby. Prosecutors ultimately sought a 6-month sentence in Silsby's case, reducing charges for conspiracy and child abduction to mere arranging irregular travel. That's pretty damning.
And then went on and robbed the people so that they couldn't build their homes. So I mean,
Yeah.
the criminality of the Clintons in general, um, the I honestly don't know how they haven't either ended up in prison or ended up in front of a firing squad. Um, it used to be we used to uh, prosecute criminals, and now we put them in Congress, we put them in the White House, we put them uh, everywhere. And here's an interesting thing. So since our nation's founding, there has not been one president. There's been impeachments. There has never been one president that's been arrested for anything, no matter what they've done. We all know the Bushes are crooked. We know Obama's crooked.
Mm-hmm.
There's been other Nixon, other presidents, Carter, that have done all kinds of bad shit, and all of them are walking free. The fact is that the United States never, unless the people that are high up, and the reason I use presidents is because that's should be considered the highest spot in the land. Unfortunately, what people make and what people have and their possessions kind of takes place of that. But I look at it like Epstein probably thought he was as safe as the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
As much stuff as he got away with. I mean, the last conviction he had was a slap on the wrist for the shit that he did.
Oh yeah, it was nothing. And when you look at these things, in fact, let's touch for a moment on the Proud Boys who just ended up getting sentenced against them. Now, were they wrong? Yes, I believe they were wrong because they ended up starting it first from that particular instance.
Yeah,
However,
it was a retaliatory thing.
Yeah, and it had been less than 1 week beforehand. One of the people from the group